The New Jersey man convicted of killing his brother, sister-in-law, and their 2 children will spend the rest of his life behind bars.
He burned down his own house, not to destroy evidence, not because he panicked. He burned down his own house so that people would look at him and feel sorry for him. Think about that for a second. This man had just murdered 4 people: his own brother, his brother's wife, and their 2 children. And his next move was to make himself look like a victim. Make it make sense. Because Paul Caneiro did not run. He did not hide. He went home, set his own house on fire, and waited. He sat in the wreckage of a life he staged, while 4 people he killed were still burning in the house next door. And for a while, it worked. That is the kind of man we are talking about today. In every home, behind every closed door, there's a story waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to Dark Whispers, where we dive deep into the hidden truths of domestic crime and the relationships that turn deadly. If you're drawn to real stories, powerful insights, and the shadows most people avoid, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and step into the whispers they never wanted you to hear. Colts Neck, New Jersey. A quiet, well-off town where people have big houses, long driveways, and the kind of lives that look perfect from the outside. That is where Keith Caneiro lived with his wife Jennifer and their 2 kids, 11-year-old Jesse and 8-year-old Sophia. Keith was not just Paul's brother. He was his business partner. The 2 of them ran a technology company together, and by every outward measure, things looked fine. 2 brothers, building something together. That is the story people saw. But money has a way of revealing who people really are. See, Paul had been helping himself to money that was not his, not a little here and there. We are talking about stealing from their shared business, from a company that Keith had just as much stake in as Paul did. And at some point, Keith found out. Girl, the moment Keith discovered what was happening, everything changed. Because now Paul was not just a thief, he was exposed. And for a man like Paul Caneiro, being exposed was not something he was willing to live with. The question was, what was he willing to do about it? Let me tell you something. When prosecutors laid out what happened, they said this was a crime rooted in greed and complete disregard for human life. And they were not wrong. But what makes this story so hard to sit with is not just the greed, it is the planning. This was not a fight that got out of hand. This was not a moment of rage where someone lost control and did something they could not take back. Paul Caneiro thought about this. He made a decision. And then he executed that decision with the kind of calm that should send a chill straight through you. On the night of November 20th, 2018, Paul drove to his brother's home in Colts Neck. Keith and Jennifer were there. So were Jesse and Sophia. Now, what happened inside that house is something the judge would later describe as chilling and calculated. And he chose those words carefully, because the evidence backed every single one of them. Paul shot Keith, and he did not stop there. The final shot, the one that ended Keith's life, was fired on the lawn outside the house. Outside, where anyone could have seen. That is how sure of himself Paul was. That is how certain he was that he was not going to get caught. Then he went back inside. Jennifer was shot in the head, and then, while she was still alive, Paul stabbed her. Moving on, because the details of what happened to the children are the part of this story that will stay with you. Jesse, 11 years old, was stabbed 7 times. Sophia, 8 years old, was stabbed 40 times. 40 times. The judge, when he recounted this at sentencing, said there is no softer or gentler way to describe what happened. He called it familicide, an annihilation of an entire family, carried out by the very person who should have protected them most. And after all of that, Paul Caneiro went to the basement He set a slow burning fire, not a fast one, a slow one, deliberately designed to give him enough time to get home before anyone noticed. He thought about the timing. He thought about the smoke. He thought about how long it would take. Period. This was not a man in a panic. This was a man with a plan. He drove home, set his own house on fire, and then sat back and waited for the world to see him as a victim. Investigation. The call came in before sunrise. A house fire in Colts Neck, a big one. Firefighters responded to Keith Caneiro's home on November 20th, 2018, and what they found when they got there was not just a structure burning. It was a family home, fully engulfed, with 4 people inside who never made it out. Keith was found on the lawn. He had been shot. Jennifer was found inside, shot and stabbed. And the children, Jesse and Sophia, were found in the rubble. The fire had taken what the knife had started. Now, around the same time that morning, a second fire was reported. Miles away, Paul Caneiro's home. And that right there, that second fire, is what Paul was counting on. He needed investigators to look at 2 burning houses and conclude that both brothers had been targeted. That somebody out there had a reason to come after the entire Caneiro family. He needed to be a grieving brother, not a suspect. But here is the thing about investigators. They look at everything, and the more they looked, the less the story Paul was telling lined up with the evidence in front of them. Like, if both brothers were targeted by the same person, where was the evidence of that? Who would want both of them dead? And why did the fire at Keith's house burn so much differently than the one at Paul's? Arson investigators started pulling at those threads, and the threads kept unraveling. Then there was the matter of the business, the technology company the brothers ran together. When investigators started digging into the finances, what they found was not a healthy partnership. What they found was theft, a pattern of money being taken, and it was not coming from Keith's side of the ledger. So now you have a man who had been stealing from his brother, a brother who had found out, and 4 people dead. Anyways, the math was not complicated. Investigators zeroed in on Paul Caneiro, and they started building their case. Paul maintained he had nothing to do with it. He pointed fingers. His defense team, years later at trial, would argue that law enforcement should have looked more closely at someone else, a man named Corey, suggesting that maybe the real killer was still out there. It was a calculated move, trying to plant just enough doubt to make a jury hesitate. It did not work. But getting to that courtroom took years. Between COVID delays, pretrial litigation, and the sheer complexity of a quadruple murder case, Paul Caneiro would not stand before a jury until 2026, more than 7 years after that night in Colts Neck. 7 years. And the whole time, Keith's family was waiting.
It certainly was, Cindy. Now, the judge gave Paul Caneiro the maximum 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for the murders of his brother's wife, and the couple's 2 children. But before that, Jennifer Caneiro's mother and sister spoke directly to him, saying that he wiped out an entire family from the face of this earth.
He stole the source of joy and happiness in our lives and replaced it with bottomless sadness, sorrow, and grief.
For a crime rooted in greed and complete disregard for human life, there must be accountability, maximum accountability. Value of their lives.
After they spoke, the judge directly addressing the 59-year-old who will now spend the rest of his life behind bars. Caneiro, shackled in a yellow prison jumpsuit, stood emotionless the entire time, saying he had nothing to say, only that was all he said. It took an hour, the judge reminding him of the crimes back in November of 2018 he's convicted of, calling them brutal and calculating, shooting and killing his brother Keith, the final shot to the head on the lawn of his home, then shooting Keith's wife Jennifer in the head inside their home and stabbing her while She was still alive. The judge then saying he slaughtered the couple's 11 and 8-year-old children, stabbing Jesse 7 times, Sophia 40 times, and then he set the home on fire to make it look like they were targeted. The prosecutor speaking to the media outside, the couple's family by their side.
When the trial finally came, it lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks of testimony, forensic evidence, and the prosecution laying out, piece by piece, exactly what the evidence said happened inside that house. The defense pushed back. They questioned the investigation. They pointed at Corey. They did everything defense attorneys are supposed to do. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. Less than 5 hours to review 15 counts against Paul Caneiro and come back with guilty on every single one of them. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of felony murder, arson, weapons charges, theft, all of it. Guilty. Oh, so now the man who spent years insisting he was innocent, who let his lawyers point the finger at someone else, who sat through 6 weeks of trial without showing the world a single crack. Now he had to face what a jury of his peers had decided about him. And he still showed nothing. Sentencing day was May 19th, 2026. Jennifer's mother stood up in that courtroom and spoke directly to the man who had destroyed her family. She told him he had stolen the source of joy and happiness in their lives and replaced it with what she called bottomless sadness, sorrow, and grief. Jennifer's sister stood up too. She looked at Paul Caneiro and told him that what he did had stolen decades. Graduations, holidays, weddings, laughter. Decades of a family's life. Gone. And Paul Caneiro stood there in his yellow prison jumpsuit and said nothing. Absolutely nothing. He was asked if he had anything to say before sentencing. He said he did. And then he said, "That was all. That was all." The judge, Judge Mark Lemieux, had plenty to say. He took an hour to work through what Paul had done. He reminded the courtroom of the details. He talked about Jesse and Sophia, 2 children who had no one left to protect them, no one left to even help each other in their final moments. He talked about the slow-burning fire Paul had set in that basement. Deliberate, timed, designed to buy himself an escape window. He said, "This was not panic. This was not confusion. It was cold, deliberate malice." And then the judge told Paul Caneiro exactly who he was from that moment forward. "You are no longer Paul Caneiro. You are an inmate number in the Department of Corrections. You are a quadruple murderer who slaughtered innocent children. That is your identity. That is the identity you will carry for the remainder of your life behind prison walls, confined to a 4-foot by 7-foot cell until your final breath. 4 consecutive life sentences. No possibility of parole. Ever. His attorney says they plan to appeal. Paul still maintains his innocence, but a jury of his peers heard everything. Every piece of evidence, every argument his defense put forward. And they came back in under 5 hours. I said what I said. Outside the courthouse, Betty Caritz, Jennifer's mother, Sophia, and Jesse's grandmother, stood in front of the cameras and said 2 words that carried the weight of 7 years. Justice was served. She said she was grateful. And when someone asked her if it was hard being in that courtroom, hearing everything from beginning to end, she said, "From beginning to end." Just that. From beginning to end. Because some pain does not need a lot of words to describe it. Some pain just is what it is. Let me tell you something. Keith, Jennifer, Jesse, and Sophia Caneiro did not die because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. They did not die because a stranger came for them. They died because the person sitting at their dinner table, the person who shared their last name, who knew their routines, who had access to their home and their trust, decided that his financial problems were worth more than their lives. That is what makes this case hit different from so many others. It was not a stranger. It was family, We talk a lot on this channel about the people who are supposed to love us being the ones who cause the most harm. And this case is one of the clearest, most devastating examples of that truth. Paul Caneiro did not just take 4 lives. He tried to erase an entire family from the face of the earth, and then rewrite the story so that he walked away clean. He almost did. But the evidence was always there. The arson patterns did not match his story. The financials told on him. The timeline told on him. And when a jury sat down with all of it, 15 counts, 6 weeks of trial, they needed less than 5 hours to see through every single thing he had constructed. Jesse deserved to grow up. Sophia deserved to grow up. Jennifer deserved to grow old. Keith deserved to find out his brother had been stealing from him and handle it the way families are supposed to handle things. Messily, imperfectly, but alive. None of them got that. Close Paul Caneiro will spend the rest of his life in a 4-foot by 7-foot cell. No parole, no second chances. No more chances to construct a story and wait for someone to believe it. The judge told him his address, for the rest of his natural life, will be the Department of Corrections. But hey, 4 life sentences do not bring back a single one of them. They do not give Betty Careitz her daughter back. They do not give Jesse and Sophia one more birthday. Justice, when it finally came loudly. But the grief that family carries is quiet, and it is permanent. So if you take anything from this story today, let it be this: greed has a cost. Secrets have a way of surfacing, and the people who count on your silence to protect them are often the people sitting closest to you. Keith's family trusted Paul with their livelihood, their future, and in the end, their lives. And he took all of it. We are not going to forget Keith. We are not going to forget Jennifer. We are not going to forget Jesse or Sophia. And we are going to keep telling these stories, because every single one of these victims deserved better than what they got.